All right, we are back on a Thursday night, open line time, and we have opened our phone lines as we talk about the effort to kind of regulate and rein in the transpotainment industry here in the city of Nashville, which we know has grown so very much. Let's go to the phones for our guests, by the way, Metro Councilman Freddie O'Connell, and also Tee Jordan and Jim Schmitz with Safe Fun Nashville. And Mike has been holding patiently. Hey, Mike, welcome.
Good evening to you, Rory.
Yeah.
Good evening to your guests as well. I have 3 bullet points, and I'm going to make them quick, and then
go ahead.
I'll pick up and just wait for the answer. First of all, we're not going to have to worry of marijuana smell in the air like Vegas with current Republican
Sure. No, I understand that. I was just bringing it up as just kind of another added layer. I don't want to get all those folks mad at me, but go ahead.
No hardship at all. And basically, as a ride-sharing driver, as I used to be, most of these girls that come in and they do the Airbnb at these various houses. I used to work the 12th South District, picking up people in the Thompson Hotel area. These girls are already intoxicated when they get in my car, and it's like 4 or 5 or 6, and there'll be 2 other ride-sharing cars behind us. And when they get on these buses, Caverns, it's party up. It's more than just having a good time. We're literally trying to brand and sell this manufactured fun for the most part, and if it was no alcohol involved, a lot of the dancing and shaking wouldn't be going on at all. But I have a problem with these golf carts in residential areas over here on 12th Avenue South and Belmont. Those were originally for just downtown, and it was dangerous enough with them being downtown, especially at night, with not the proper lighting. So my point is, if things can get out of hand, and we have to have it basically regulated and stop looking at the money and look at the safety aspect. But I do have a problem to a certain extent of people moving here. I'm a native of Nashville, and having people just try to up and change everything when you knew when you moved here, it's a certain wave that's going on, and you're trying to shift that wave to fit your needs. And if you don't like it, basically, move somewhere else. And not that you don't have a right to have your side spoken for, but this city has lost a lot of its soul, and it's done for a lot of reasons for people who have moved here from other places. And that's all I got to say. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Councilman, you've probably heard that many times.
Well, and it's interesting, right? Because I feel like so much of the out of control nature of what is happening in and around the entertainment district is actually not people who have moved here looking to do this, right? This is very much catering toward short-term visitors. Yeah, I do appreciate the point, right? Nashville is changing too with an influx of people who are moving here. But I think by and large, their outlook is pretty consistent with people who are already here. That Nashville is a city with a lot of opportunity, that in many ways still Nashville has a much more favorable cost of living than a lot of places around the country that have as much or more opportunity than we have, and ours is growing quickly. But I think a lot of this, and I mean, that's what's been really fascinating to me, is to look at, the number one organization in the city that looks at how to get more people to come visit Nashville. The Convention and Visitors Corporation has been very supportive of trying to get a regulatory framework in place here.
Sure. And you've heard obviously from Jim and Tee and their group, and I'm sure other residents. What about actual business owners, especially within the entertainment district downtown? What do they say? How is it impacting? Obviously, they want folks to have fun and bring them to the honky tonks, and we know there's bachelorette parties and other groups coming in, and that's fine. But what are they saying?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you have a whole bunch of different kinds of businesses, right? And 3 of the biggest business entities in the downtown area, right? You do have a lot of businesses that participate in the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce. You have the Nashville Downtown Partnership, and Jim and I have both kind of worked in that space as well. And then kind of more around the entertainment district, you have a group that is kind of under the umbrella of the district, which is sort of that whole historic area of downtown, which includes the entertainment district. And they've got a merchants group sort of under that umbrella. The partnership and the Chamber of Commerce are very favorable on the approach we're taking here. They've been very involved in the conversation. District merchants, a lot of that room is eager to see some regulation as well. Because, for anybody who goes and buys however many cases of whatever at a local beer or liquor store and brings that onto a party bus, that's also folks that probably aren't coming in their doors, paying a cover and listening to live music, right? And so there's a little bit of competition from that roaming around. Now, some of them do let off at some of those bars. I think, Jim said it sort of in a break, there's a look for balance, right? A lot of the district merchants folks, they don't want to necessarily see the industry shut down, but I think everybody is looking for a pathway to something that doesn't cause more of that loss of soul that Mike was talking about, right? That there's a way to rein this in and not to shut a whole bunch of businesses down, but to kind of get our arms around it.
This reminds me, and it's a smaller scale of an issue kind of before the pandemic hit that we dealt with that was, headline news. It was the scooter issue when Lime and Bird and all these other scooters showed up, and just all of a sudden there were scooters everywhere and everyone knew this is a problem. There's just too many. And we were able to address that issue. And now there are still scooters out there, but far fewer, and it seems to have worked, the approach the city has taken. So let's talk a little bit about... By and large,
that's right.
By and large,
this is very, very close corollary to that, because with scooters, there was a moment, Rory, when that had exceeded every other complaint I've gotten, right?
Yeah.
We got that, one, they were pulled off the streets for a little bit while we worked out the regulatory framework. We went through this whole model where we basically set performance standard through an RFP model. We got it to like the 3-bet instead of this race to the bottom. I think that's what we're looking at. In each of these circumstances, when it is an unregulated or underregulated scenario, then the quest is to just make as much revenue as you can, and that's where the guys are looking for tips, encouraging as much moving as possible. Yeah. When you create the performance standard, you say, well, now it's a race to the top, and the only people we're going to let on the streets of Nashville are the ones that can meet that threshold. Yeah, we're going to get into some of the specifics again of your proposal, but Jim and T, I want you to chime in as to what initially, before the councilman got involved and filed this, I know you issued, you were on the news, you issued kind of a news release and said, hey, enough's enough. Here's what we think should happen. Tell us a little bit about what you would like to see happen.
I think where we came off at the very beginning was we don't have the answers. We're not experts in safety, right? But we know it's not safe. When we saw that unfortunately that young man, 22, who fell off and then got run over by one of these vehicles, and that kind of spurred a lot of this. So we don't have a specific guidelines that we think, but we just thought that there should be a dialogue about putting those guidelines in place.
And T, let me ask you, what was the reaction? Have you gotten generally combative or cooperative reaction from the owners of some of these businesses?
Well, some are in favor, and some feel like that we're trying to have too much regulation and stop entrepreneurship, and that is definitely not the case here, right? When we first started this, as Jim has said, we didn't have specific legislation, and we thank Freddie for sponsoring some legislation here. That is the first step. But definitely we thought Nashville was smart enough, since we already have something on the books already, just to at least start with adding the larger vehicles to the already established laws, right? Right. And so now we have some legislation that we are fully supporting and standing behind. And we just hope, Rory, you were talking about me being from Nashville. I can remember back in about the 99, 2000 year, me and my friends, the things to do was to play your music as loud as you can get it downtown and put your lights and soup your cars up. Yeah. And immediately, about a couple of months after a lot of complaints, the police cracked down. So let's just crack down on some laws that are currently in place right now. That will be a start for me.
Let's talk about that, Councilman. And 737 plus the phone number. Got a couple of callers on hold. Callers, hang in there. We will get you on the air here in just a moment as we just learn a little more about this legislation and how it works, because we mentioned the smaller vehicles, the larger vehicles, there's Metro, and there's the state, which is kind of an issue here. Tell us a little more, Councilman, about how this works and who's regulating what.
Right, and so I think the open question in terms of why we have taken so long and taken such a patient and deliberative approach before I felt comfortable filing anything was there has been a little bit of an open question about we have a certain amount of local authority granted to us by the state of Tennessee, right? And that many times that's about, hey, what are you allowed to go raise revenue around? What are you allowed, on state routes? Who has various degrees of authority? We do have the full authority to regulate vehicles like pedal taverns, like golf carts, and like scooters. There's really no question about that. For instance, we had a caller talking about ride sharing. Years ago, the folks went to the state and basically said, all right, in Tennessee, we're effectively not going to allow any local regulation of ride sharing operations, right? And so we don't have much there, right? You may remember a few years ago, the city of Austin in Texas banned ride sharing, right? Because they had some serious safety issues emerge there and wanted to get to a regulatory scenario, and the companies didn't agree, and the whole negotiation fell apart, and eventually they said, fine, we're shutting you all down. We don't think we have that type of authority here where we could just snap our fingers and say we're going to take these vehicles off the street. We do think, though, that there's very likely a case to be made that we have the legal authority to do most of, 90% of this bill is basically about adding sections for these vehicles with these definitions under the jurisdiction of our local transportation licensing authority, or commission rather. And so we are still probably going to go seek some clarification from the state of Tennessee, probably through a legislative process starting in January, and conversations with the state, with Metro Legal, with the mayor's office, with the legal counsel in the Metro Council office. They have all advanced to a point that made us feel comfortable that we could get this done and start this conversation in this way right now that gives us a regulatory framework. Now, I don't think that we're going to pass this bill exactly as it is in 6 weeks, right? I think probably we'll go back out and have a second round of conversations with folks in the industry. I'm sure we will get some technical corrections from Metro Legal.
As you know, it's a process. Legislative, legally, it's all a process for sure.
And this is a big one. But I will also say the thing that makes me very encouraged is I know it's great to have folks out there that are interested in this issue, that understand the priority, right? Like having T and Jim on this call, and a whole big coalition that involves the Downtown Partnership, the CVC, Chamber of Commerce, most of my urban residents, right? But I've also got a lot of colleagues. I mean, as we're coming out of the gates on this bill, I think last time I counted, we had 19 co-sponsors. So we're looking pretty good.
People are on board, because like you said, there are peripheral districts involved, which we'll talk about. We got to take another break. 2 callers on hold. Be patient. We'll get to you. Open Line will be right back. I will be right there.